You've been senator for a little over a year. Give me three legislative wins that you are the most proud of.
Well, that's a tough one, but it's great to be here. Listen, had I not been elected, we wouldn't have passed the American Rescue Plan, which literally put shots in people's arms. It provided resources for struggling families and struggling small businesses. We supported our cities and municipalities so they wouldn't have to lay off firefighters and police officers. And we supported Black farmers, and we passed the expanded child tax credit, which experts say cuts child poverty in half. Of course, it was not extended, which I would like to see us do in future legislation. But I have to tell you, Kane, the day we passed the American Rescue Plan, one of my colleagues called me on the phone and said, I want to thank you for winning. He's a third term senator. He's in his third term. He said, today is the best day of my career. So having that long vantage point, that is his view of the significance of that piece of legislation. I felt a little bad because it was his third term, it was my third month. We passed the American Rescue Plan. We went on from there, passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is investments in America. It's America's home improvement project. It's bridges, it's roads, it's broadband. It's all of these things. It's infrastructure, it's water. And now on to the competition bill, which is about building a great American future. And I'm glad to serve on the conference committee for that bill.
You mentioned Black farmers, and you've been a big advocate for Black farmers. You've been fighting back against discrimination from the USDA. But the debt relief from Black farmers has been on hold with all these lawsuits. What is the status of that?
You're right. We put the bill inside of the American Rescue Plan, which provided debt relief to Black farmers who have been suffering for a very long time. At the turn of the 20th century, Black farmers were about 14% of the farmers in our country. Now it's maybe less than 2% of farmers. And they have suffered from historic and distinctive, unique forms of discrimination, in addition to the struggles that's all small farmers endure. And so we put a bill in the American Rescue Plan, which responded to socially disadvantaged farmers before we could get the money out of the door. There were groups led by one of Trump's proselytes who blocked it in court before we could get it out of the door. But we are moving forward. We were able to provide technical support to farmers through $1 billion that's in that $5 billion package. And I continue to lean on the USDA to do everything we can, not only for Black farmers, but for small farmers who are struggling. We have a piece of legislation that will do that will provide debt relief to 97% of the farmers we were trying to help in the first bill and other farmers. And I'm not going to rest until we get that over the finish line.
Yeah, it's really an important issue. So you've pushed the Department of Education to pause the repayment of federal student loan debt. You are supportive of student loan forgiveness up to $50,000. You want to see that happen. But the question from my audience, I get this question all the time. How can this be done? I hear it can be done as simple as an executive order. Then I hear it has to go through Congress. So if there is actual student loan forgiveness, how can it be done?
Student loan debt forgiveness can be done by executive order.
Okay.
And we're pushing the president to do it. I've been pushing hard for this. I've been able to ask him about this directly on a couple of occasions. And I'm hoping that we will hear something from him on this very soon. But I hope that when the announcement comes, it will be transformative and something that will really make a difference in the lives of ordinary people. So that's something I'll continue to push on. Listen, 20 years after finishing college, Black students still owe about 90% of their original loan. In some instances, they owe more because of interest and penalties and fees. there's very little that we could do that would be more effective at closing the racial wealth gap, at encouraging home ownership, and the starting of small businesses than student debt relief. Too many of our young people have a mortgage before they have a mortgage. I
Yeah,
speak from
I'm
experience.
one.
I was the first college graduate in my family, and that was a little while ago. So even though it was tough and a burden on me, I was able to pay off my student loans in pretty short order, even though I have 4 degrees. But fast forward, I hate to admit it, almost 35 years later, our kids are coming out of school at a time when student loan debt has surpassed auto loans in our country. It is the second largest form of debt next to home mortgages. It surpassed credit card loans. And so we can do better than this. This would not only help those individual borrowers, but it would do a whole lot to unleash innovation and a future filled with entrepreneurs and the kind of investment we need in our economy.
I'm glad to hear you're pushing President Biden for that. That would be, like you said, transformative and a big win. So I want to talk about HBCUs for a minute. You've been supporting HBCUs to build out their STEM programs and have be more competitive with federal STEM grants. Can you speak to that? Because of course, in the great state of Georgia, we have so many phenomenal HBCUs.
We have amazing HBCUs in the state of Georgia and all across our country, particularly in the South. These schools have historically punched way above their weight. They've been doing so much for so many for so long with so very little that people expect them to continue to do it. Well, we're in the 21st century. We're in the age of STEM and technology. This is not the age of George Washington Carver, who did amazing things coming out of that grand Tuskegee tradition. See, Morehouse man said something nice about Tuskegee. But that was a different time. We got to invest in these HBCUs if they are to compete, and more importantly, if we are to have the benefit of all of our brilliant minds. The minds are there on the campus, but very often they don't have the resources of other schools. So one of the things that's coming out of this jobs and competition bill is investments in HBCUs so that they can get their fair share of R&D, research and development money. Out of all of our HBCUs, not one of them is a R1 research institution. And as a member of the Commerce Committee, that's something that I'm trying to fix. As I said, we have ingenuity, brilliance, intelligence, commitment, grit, and determination on the campuses of those schools, and we just need to invest in them. And when we invest in them, we invest in America.
So, Senator, you've given me a list of some of the great things you've done over the past year, more than a year. I was in the barbershop and I was talking to some people, chit-chatting. You know how it is in the barbershop.
That's where you find out what's going on.
Exactly. And this is a messaging conversation. And I got into a heated debate because I had several folks tell me the Biden administration, Democrats haven't done anything for Black folks. And I'm given the list of federal judges and the work that you've done and so on, but they're not hearing me. So what do you say? Is it a messaging issue? What's the problem that I feel like some, not all, there is this narrative that we didn't get voting rights, didn't get George Floyd Policing Act, and they're not doing enough or they haven't done anything. I'm trying to tell them, but they aren't hearing me. And so messaging, what's not getting across? Because these are some big wins that you mentioned.
Yeah. We've had big wins, and I'm going to continue to fight on those things that you mentioned. Nobody's more passionate and committed in the Congress than me on the issue of voting rights. It's something I fought for tooth and nail. And I do want people to keep in mind that we had every member of the caucus ready, including those who've been reluctant in the past to change the rules. We had every member of the caucus ready to do what was necessary to move forward on voting rights, except 2. We had 48 Democrats ready to change the rule, and all 50 of us were on the bill. So we'll continue to fight for voting rights. We'll continue to fight for criminal justice reform, issues I've worked on long before I came to Congress. Here's the thing. We have been going through now 2 years of a pandemic. I think there's a way in which the whole country is suffering from a kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, I don't know that we can fully take stock of what has happened to all of us in this moment when we've lost over 1 million American lives and livelihoods lost as a result of this pandemic. And we're continuing to dig our way back. And so we've got to keep fighting, keep pushing, showing up for one another. But in the midst of that, we passed the American Rescue Plan, which gets this virus. We've begun to get this virus under control. There are the variants. But life is certainly a lot better than it would have been if we hadn't passed this legislation. We passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and that's money literally hitting our streets. You will see it in a project near you very soon. And now we're getting ready to pass the competition bill. We put Ketanji Brown Jackson on the United States Supreme Court. Now, we still don't have the majority that we want, but her being there matters. And if I had not gotten elected, chances are she would not be sitting there. And so voting matters, and all of us have got to continue to show up. Dr. King used to say that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. There are days when we have fits and starts, but we get up, and as my dad used to say, we put our shoes on and we keep moving.
I'm assuming that you knew there would be gridlock from Congress, from Republicans rather, before you were elected. Now that you are a senator, is it as bad as you thought it would be, or is it even worse?
Well, gridlock is real, and the deep partisanship that we see in this town, the demagogues and architects of division are certainly determined. But also, to be, there's a way in which when we work together, it doesn't get a lot of attention in the media. And, when we were passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill, a very strange thing happened. It's called the Warnock Cruz Amendment. And I don't mean Warnock went on a cruise. I haven't had any time to do that. I mean Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz and I are both on the Commerce Committee. I disagree with him most of the time by far. But we found a way to work together in the bipartisan infrastructure bill to get Interstate 14, which runs through Texas and Alabama and Georgia, named a priority corridor so that we could get that interstate built out. It would support jobs and military installations and tech hubs in Georgia. It will do a lot of good in Texas. And so here we are, two men who disagree, some might think on almost everything. But we got together on the night we passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill in order to get that road named a priority corridor. My job as a legislator is to recognize that there is a road that runs through our humanity that's bigger than politics, bigger than race, bigger than region. And our job is to try to build out that road so that everybody can get to where they want to go. And so that's the work I'm trying to do, whether it's lowering the cost of insulin, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, giving students debt relief and helping them to find a path to college as I need it, or to technical school or vocational school, whether it means investing in Head Start so that young children, poor children, have access to the kind of education that they need. I'm going to get up every morning and keep trying to build out that road.
Last question before you go, and I have to ask this. Herschel Walker, it's been kind of disturbing to me that you guys are polling neck and neck in some polls, but I don't think he can be ignored. He doesn't really speak to media. He doesn't want to do any debates even with the GOP primary, but he has a lot behind him, and he has the MAGA base behind him. What is your message to Georgia voters who are, for some reason, debating between you and possibly Herschel Walker?
Well, first of all, I do not know who my opponent will be. We'll know that soon.
Right, true.
And the pundits will have plenty of time to talk about that. Here's what I'm focused on, the work that the people of Georgia asked me to do. You know, I had an older father. He was a World War II era veteran, and he had old school values that he passed on to me. He said, son, when people hire you to do a job, do the job they hired you to do. And so every morning, it is the high honor of my life to be able to get up and spend my days thinking about how to make life better, not only for my mother, who's an 84-year-old senior down in Savannah, Georgia, but for other seniors like her. It is criminal that our seniors are having to choose between prescription drugs and groceries in the richest country in the world. I get to stand up for her. And while there are those on the Supreme Court who seem poised to trample over women's reproductive rights, here's work that we could actually be doing together. The United States of America has an abysmally high level of maternal mortality. Women die at records that are just inexcusable in a country with our technology and medical resources, particularly Black women, who are 3 to 4 times more likely to die than their white sisters in Georgia, as much as 6 times. And that's why I was proud to join with Marco Rubio, of all people, on the other side of the aisle, to push forward a bill to work on these issues around maternal mortality. The fact that I get to do this every day is the honor of my life, and I'm gonna keep doing it with all my might.
Well, I want to thank you. You know, you were on before, and you've kept your promises. You've really been a great advocate for the people of Georgia and the American people in the U.S. Senate. So I want to thank you for coming on. How can people support you? Of course, you know, we have an election coming up. How can they follow you and support you?
Well, you can go to our Twitter page or go to my website and learn more about the work that we're doing. Keep the faith, everybody.